If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come, bring my spirits up. There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.
Welcome back to my coverage of the Kristen Smart trial in week 11, Tuesday, September 27th, 2022. In Salinas, California at the Monterey County Courthouse. So we start the day off with a little interesting tidbit. Apparently Susan was back in court for the first time since opening statements. Could that mean today will be closing statements? Here are some other slides where people are also wondering where she's been. I happen to know that she's been preoccupied because her boyfriend Mike apparently is suffering from cancer and she's having to go out of the area to specialized hospitals. And I'm sure there's other reasons as well. The court is 2 hours away. So maybe she's in court today because she'll be taking the stand. If she does, I'm not expecting her to share any details, putting anyone in her family in bad light. In Susan's eyes, from her own mouth, she and her family are the victims, harassed by the smarts and their, quote, henchmen. Or maybe she's here because today will be the end of testimony. Lots of maybes there. We're just going to have to wait and see. Today was a 10:30 a.m. start day, and defense attorney Sanger calls Detective Henry Stewart to the stand. Side note, I knew he was one of the two original investigators, and I've been wondering why I hadn't heard from him yet. I'm pretty sure he hasn't taken the stand. If he did, it was just for a hot second. So anyway, moving on, Henry Stewart was assigned to Kristen's case in June of 1996 through 1999. When Sanger accused Mr. Stewart of surveilling Paul, first he said he didn't know what he meant by surveilling. Then Sanger asked, "Did you follow him to work?" And the answer was, "I didn't follow him. I did go to his place of work in Irvine, California." Stewart confirmed that in 2000 to 2001, he and Detective Crawford worked with the FBI in an undercover operation to get a confession from Paul. Sanger asked the question, on July 1st of 96, "Did you interview Tim Davis?" Answer, "I'm not positive of the date." Sanger says, he wants to ask Stewart about a certain portion. "Did Tim tell you he saw Kristen laying in the front yard?" Answer, "Of the house next door, yes." Next question. "Did Tim say he saw Paul with another group of fraternity brothers outside, walking around?" Answer, "Correct." Next question. "Okay, no further questions." That was odd. What was that about? I guess reasonable doubt with the frat brothers? I'm not really sure. It reminds me of Scapegoat Ted from earlier in the trial. Remember Ted? Scapegoat Ted. He never took the stand either. Now the prosecution cross-examines and asks Mr. Stewart, "Did Tim also tell you he saw Paul and Kristen sitting together and talking several times at the party?" "Objection," Sanger says. "That's not a prior inconsistent statement. Overruled." Answer, yes. Next question. "Did Tim tell you he also saw them talking at the bar on another occasion that night?" Answer, yes. Question. "Did Tim tell you about how Kristen was stumbling and unable to stand and they couldn't walk very fast?" Answer, yes. Music had no questions for Stewart, and Sanger said no further questions, and Stewart was excused at 10:50 a.m. after only 10 minutes on the stand. Wow. When you're writing it, it seems like it would have been more than 10 minutes. But good. I'm glad they're clicking right along here. Next, Sanger called Detective Cole to the stand. We've heard from Detective Cole multiple times throughout the trial. He is a sworn peace officer for 28 years, and he came on board to Kristen's case in 2017. So he establishes that he went through the entire huge, all capitalized, case file and had to wait a while for the FBI files that he requested. It was agreed that there was somewhere between 150,000 and possibly even more than 200,000 pages in the file. Oh my gosh. Cole tells Sanger, for the most part, he has a good idea of what was in the case file. And those files included Cal Poly Police Department, SLO Sheriff's Department, and FBI files as well. Singer and Cole talked about a CPA named Joe and psychics who were some of the people that were offering leads. And Singer wants to know who Dennis Mahan, he says, and I think he's mispronouncing his name. I think it's Mahon. It's Mahon. So in the notes, it was noting that Singer was mispronouncing the name throughout, which with all the talking I'm doing, I can see how that happens, or it might be intentional, who knows. So anyway, moving on, they said that Dennis was another person who interjected themselves into the case. Side note, those were interesting times. Dennis did really put the pressure on the family, and I don't have time to get into it all now, but for those of you who like to go next layer deep, it's definitely interesting stuff. You can find it online. Son of Susan and Dennis. He has a YouTube channel too. It hasn't been active for a long time, but when he was active, he was active. Okay, moving along. Singer asked Cole about Chris Lambert, and they established that he is a podcaster. And then Singer says, and he's behind me somewhere. He's been attending court pretty regularly. And Cole answers, yes. They agree that the podcast started in the fall of 2019. And Singer says Dennis, and he continues to mispronounce his last name, is noted here by Chris Lambert. So he says he continues to pass out a lot of rumors. Objection, leading, sustained. Question, he passed out tips that turned out not to be founded. Answer, yes. Singer asks about Sandy, who moderates the Kristin Facebook page. Objection, relevance, sustained. Singer says, Your Honor, it comes up in his testimony. And Judge O'Keefe says, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief stretch break. So they come back, and Cole testifies that he did have concerns about the Justice for Kristin Smart Facebook page. He thought it could jeopardize the investigation. And he agreed that the page was dedicated to convicting Paul. And then Singer asks Cole about Justin Goodwin and confirms that Justin expressed interest in the $75,000 reward, providing the tip that he provided. But then I see something contradictory later about that. So a couple different variations of that. I think I get to it here. Chris's notes say that he says he had no knowledge of Justin attempting to get the reward. It's a 50-50 guess on which one is right, but I always lean towards Chris. And Chris's version says that Cole says he had no knowledge of Justin attempting to get the reward. So best I can do there. So continuing on, Justin's Facebook post, one of them was of concern, and they published the photo. We already heard about it, the one with the clock that says TikTok, motherfucker. Sorry about the language. Cole told him take it down and to tone it down, which we already heard about that too in Justin's direct testimony. Singer asked, and there were dog alerts in Wasna, right? Objection, lack of foundation. Singer says, Your Honor, look, I'm just going to do this. Just so weird. And Judge O'Keefe asked counsel to approach. And this time, instead of going out in the hall, they play white noise in the courtroom to obscure the sound. They're mixing it up. So when they come back, they ask about the sites that were excavated in Wasna, and there were two of them. One was a 2x4, and the other was large, was what they tried to say at first. And then they fine-tuned it to give the measurement of 60 by 40 feet, which is pretty big. Cole also testified that there was searches at Paul's mom's house on Branch Street where no evidence was collected. He could not recall if there were canine searches at that address. Cole went over canine searches at Ruben's house, and Cole organized excavations at Ruben's after the dog alerts, but no human remains were found. We already know all that. They touched on various wiretaps involving the Flores family. Cole confirmed FBI was not part of the investigation. Detective Cole admits they tried to create tension between Ermelinda and her husband Brett. That's dirty. That was my commentary right there, sorry. By interviewing Brett, and then, of course, he went to speak to Ermelinda. And they also touched on Ermelinda's immunity offer. I already have an episode on that. If you want to know more about that, we go over the documents, the official documents on that. Okay, continuing on. They also discussed using Chris Lambert's podcast, being the first to release the information that the trucks, once belonging to the family, were in police custody. We had heard earlier in the trial that the detectives did this strategically in hopes that the family would slip up on wiretaps. After lunch break, Cole continued his testimony regarding his communication with Justin Goodwin. Remember Justin? Jennifer's friend, roommate, ex-boyfriend. Cole testified. Oh, not ex-boyfriend. Cole testified that Goodwin sent a letter to the Smarts, and Cole later received a copy of it. Cole received pictures of the skate ramp and Jennifer's contact information from Goodwin as well. Cole spoke about Jennifer missing an interview with him because she was sick. We already heard about that. He also said Lambert, quote, warned her not to tell Cole some things. Sanger asks, Jennifer had a Facebook message to Justin. She said she posted some prospects, right? Cole answers, that's what she told me. Sanger says, and you knew her father was involved with objection, Your Honor. The judge gives a stern look to Sanger, and then he says, I thought we could do that. I didn't say the name. Oh my gosh. The judge says, it's time for another stretch break, ladies and gentlemen. And the attorneys leave for a 4-minute sidebar. And then when Sanger comes back, he asks Cole, what are prospects based on his experience? And he answers, lower level members attempting to join an outlaw motorcycle gang. Oh my gosh, Sanger's so satisfied. Finally, he gets the prospect stuff revealed, and it's part of testimony now. He just tried so hard during Jennifer's testimony to get that in, and I still say, who cares about the bikers? So what? It's just so weird. Sanger says, thank you. And he meant that, in my opinion. He says she also indicated Paul had talked about his place in Wasna. Answer, yes. Jennifer said it could have been a friend or a family member's place. Cole tried to connect the property to Paul. Cole said one of Paul's former bosses lived just up the road. And when he said that, Paul looked up at Sanger, looked right up at his face, it said, which is interesting. Cole was not able to prove that Paul was ever out there. And then Sanger says, no further questions. After lunch, Deputy Sullivan, the bailiff, lets everyone know it's his last day before his long vacation. All the jurors make a disappointed "aww" sound. One juror also asked to bring him a cake tomorrow. Side note, that's so nice. I'm happy to hear the jurors bonded with Deputy Sullivan. And Chris shares with us, because you know Chris Lambert's in the courtroom every day, and he says that Sullivan and Deputy Zaragoza have been in the courtroom since June 6th of 2022, way back during the pretrial hearings. And I guess they pass out seat cushions and water bottles and candy to the jurors, and they collect the questions that they want that need to be brought up to the judge. So Cole confirms that Jennifer Hudson said Paul told her he had, quote, taken care of Kristen and admitted to burying her at, quote, my place. They also talked about 11 different skateboarders were talked to, and they all said Paul didn't skateboard. You know, skateboarding is pretty cliquey, and the area was even smaller then than it is now. And then Prevail does cross-examination of Cole, and he asks, what vehicles did the family own in 1996? And Cole answers, a white 1985 Nissan, a 93 Ford Ranger, Ford Explorer, and 2 other vehicles that belonged to Paul's sister, Ermelinda. Side note, we all know that Susan's beloved Volkswagen that she was so upset about when it was seized. Next question made my ears perk up. Question, did Jennifer ever tell you she was worried that the Flores family would hurt her if she came forward? Sanger objected and again motioned for a new trial. Side note, that family freaks me out too. They've used intimidation tactics with others, including Chris Lambert, and he covers that in one of his podcasts. I'm sure most of you listen to that and you know what I'm talking about. So Singer says there's no evidence the family tried to intimidate Jennifer and had no grounds to make such a claim. And Singer also says the prosecution's questioning prejudiced the jury. Gosh, Mr. Dramatic, in my opinion. And then Pavrel snaps back, accusing Singer. He says he's brought many frivolous misconduct claims. Judge O'Keefe overruled Singer's motion for a new trial. Again, I've lost track of how many times he's tried this. And then Judge O'Keefe says, questioning from counsel should not be considered evidence. And she added, the defense has gotten away with numerous leading questions. So now Singer is whispering. He's whispering to his investigator, Ramona Messina. Then he says, we had a failure of communication. I intended that we'd have an exhibit, but I didn't communicate well, so I'll do something else. Question. And Mr. Lambert had information on Mr. Mahan, correct? Answer. I believe they communicated. Singer. And one thing that Mr. Mahan told Mr. Lambert was... Objection. Hearsay. Singer says, well, I should be able to finish the question. And the prosecution says, Your Honor, there's no possible finish with an acceptable question. Singer says, oh, that's a challenge. I'll withdraw. Okay, that is so weird. Side note, what is going on with these attorneys today? They are full of piss and vinegar, man. And continuing on with prosecution questions of Cole. Prosecution asked if in 96 they had a Volkswagen. Answer, yes. Question, in 96, did Paul's ID show Ruben's house on his driver's license? Answer, yes. And then it's Meesek's turn, and he asked Cole, how many total excavations were there, including the ones at Ruben's? Answer, 8 total. Question, were there any human remains found? Answer, no. Not at Ruben's, but they did find animal bones at Cal Poly in the excavation. Side note, they haven't mentioned it much before now, but they did excavate the hillside behind the red brick dorms at one point. Singer asked if pig bones were found in Wasna, and the answer was small inch-long animal bones were found. He couldn't specify the animal the bones came from. Singer asked, did you know whether the press was tipped before the search at the family's homes? Answer, his team did not notify press about Paul's arrest at his home in San Pedro. Singer tries to link Sheriff Parkinson's effort on the case to his re-election campaigns. Objection on relevance sustained. There was multiple questions about that. I'm not going to go through them all. They're not important. They were objected to anyway. And then Singer says, after Paul's arrest, the sheriff held a whole big press conference. Objection, relevance sustained. And Singer says, Your Honor, 780. Then Judge O'Keefe repeats, sustained, more firmly. And Singer says, how about 781? No, I'm kidding. All right. I have no further questions. 780 is about honesty, by the way. I looked that up. So I don't know what the heck that was. I don't know. It's getting a little weird now. So the prosecution came back and they asked if any human blood was found during the excavation at Ruben's. And he answered yes, and Singer objected after the answer, which was overruled anyway. And then the judge excuses the jurors for lunch. Singer says he has a motion for mistrial. Pavrel not only went beyond the scope of the prior inconsistent statements, he used the opportunity to bring up statements that were already testified to. He accuses the prosecution of making extremely prejudicial statements, saying it makes his client and his father look bad. He says it's a blatant attempt to prejudice the jury against my client. Again, he calls for a mistrial. And the prosecution says his question was a direct response to 1.5 hours of leading questions. And the judge says, motion denied. And the judge reminds Singer he has asked many, 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 many leading questions. And then there's another 15-minute break. And then Susan comes back in and tells the bailiff that the jurors didn't make room for her to sit. And the bailiff tells her there's not always going to be room for everyone to sit. The defense rests its case at 3:39 p.m. Singer says, Your Honor, in light of circumstances that were beyond our control, we would rest. Sanger and Misek both concluded their presentations, obviously. It looks like our guess earlier about Susan being present could mean the defense would rest their case was accurate. So the judge reminds the jurors that it's extremely important that they continue to adhere to the admonishments. She thanked them for their hard work and asked that they please don't research or discuss the case with anyone. Court was dismissed for the day, and Tuesday is expected to resume 10:30 a.m. schedule, and that will be September 29th, 2022. And Wednesday is going to be an off-the-record day in which the different parties apparently will discuss the next steps to the trial, and I have more details on that I found out later in a minute. And so we're just waiting for closing arguments and then the verdict watch. We're headed to the mountains, so I promise to keep the coverage going, just a different format. I'll probably just go live with mountain sceneries, and we'll touch base, because vacations to unplug in the mountains, the lakes, the rivers, the natural hot springs, that's all nature's medicine for me. But of course, my eyes and ears are going to be on the case. And like I said, I'll pop in for a little brief coverage. And Chris says that they learned that the Hurricane Ian, that's headed to Florida, was what prevented a defense witness, Dr. Jim Ha, from making it to court today. So that was the reference to Sanger, hence circumstances beyond his control. The prosecution asked the court's position on personal waivers regarding defendants' refusal to testify, and the judge says, I usually do not accept personal waivers. And she says, I assume counsel had numerous discussions with their client about their right to testify. Side note, I don't think anyone expected them to testify. It's usually best not to take the stand in your own defense under any circumstances, and I would say especially not under these. So the jury instruction will take place later in the week, and then the closing arguments, and then the juries will begin to deliberate. I feel like the jurors aren't going to drag this on. I pray for their guidance and their strength to make it through this last little bit of this. So it sounds like we still have a little ways to go. The closer we get, the less patient I become. I'm not a patient person anyway. That's something else I'm working on. And earlier, I guess after a 3-minute stretch, the judge came back and tells the jurors, quote, you'll be certified yoga instructors by the time we get out of here, end quote. And the jurors all laughed. And I guess that the off-the-record meeting is going to be the attorney's meeting by Zoom, and it's to work out the defense exhibits. I knew it. He's still not organized. And Judge O'Keefe is editing the jury instructions as well. All right, guys, we made it. Let's hang in there. And as I always say, justice for Kristin.
If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just be love and watch the smiles come.
Thanks for watching.
Bring my spirits up.
Don't forget to stop and smell the flowers.
There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.